Hello YouTube. I have a doozy for you. This damned Gateway computer. It is a Gateway... where's the label? It is a Gateway... FX540X. Which is obviously a desktop PC. It's from about the year 2008. Windows got fucked up on this thing. My friend Mike, this is my friend Mike's computer. I just decided to just be a nice guy, take it home and get Windows back on there for him, but a lot more crap. This computer apparently just had been through the ringer or something. I don't know what's going on in here, but I had to do a lot to get this thing to work properly. And, man, it's just I've never had a computer give me this much shit before. Like, all at once, anyway. But, as you can see, I've been reinstalling Windows right now because of a bunch of weird things happening. But, here's where it starts. When I booted the Windows disk at first, there was no, like, I booted up the Vista disk here. I'm just using a plain old OEM Windows disk. Boot it up. Get to the menu thing there, and no drives show up. So this thing has N-Force controllers on it, so it's an NVIDIA chipset. Which, you know, I guess this is just from that era of, you know, Vista plus N-Force, which of course spelled out hell in the pre-Service Pack 1 days, which I unfortunately went through with an Asus board in 2006. So essentially, this thing has been a doozy. First, I thought the hard drive was bad, so I tested another drive, a known good working 250GB hard drive, and it did the same shit. I tried to load a RAID driver from Gateway's own disk, and it didn't work. So I went into the BIOS and shut RAID off completely. Problem solved. Reads the drive and everything. It has a 500GB Western Digital Caviar SE16 in it, which has 3 bad sectors. But 3 bad sectors should not prevent the drive from booting or working at all. 3 bad sectors is not a big deal. However, when you have any bad sectors at all, I would suggest planning on buying a new drive. You don't have to right away, but I would, you know, save up the dough. The weirdest part about this thing is, as you can see, I've been installing Vista, and let me just enter these details real quick, actually. Alright, now that I've got all those details in, I'll just let this thing churn along and examine what the hell is in this computer, which is what I should talk about next. In fact, I should just open it and show you what all's in this thing. Although I probably need a light in order to do that, so let's see what just shows up on the video here. Actually, it shows up okay. Not very well, but I put a newer graphics card in here. This thing really move. This thing had an 8800 GT in it, and you guys know from my previous videos that these things are the devil. This thing is working, but these coolers allow these 8800 GTs to burn up. So before this thing burns up, I simply gave him one of my old cards. I put in an EVGA GT240, which is an NVIDIA card, which is probably a nicely needed upgrade. This board can do SLI, but I don't see the need for it in his particular application. So it's got a 512 meg GT240 in there, which should do well, because that was a 512 meg 8800 GT. And as you can see, it's working fine. I mean, picture shows up, everything. This was the card in my main box about a year ago, so. Now here's another story that just pissed me off to no end. I've been trying to get this thing going, and I was installing Windows, and whenever I got to Service Pack 1, sometimes even before then, kept reinstalling Windows a couple times. So I get to Service Pack 1, and in the middle of installing Service Pack 1, it kept freezing. For just, like, no apparent reason. Just hard freeze. And I install Service Packs on Windows before any drivers are installed, so that it doesn't mess with the drivers and cause freezes like that. I do it to prevent that in the first place. And just other weird things that happen, like corruption or just slow performance when, you know, upgrading to a new service pack in general. So, basically, I thought it was the RAM. So I took RAM from another system I had, stuck it in here, tried installing Vista again. In the middle of the Vista install, it had a hard freeze. And that just wound me up to no end. So I put the old RAM back in and tried it again. Had the same issue. So I tried something drastic. I thought, maybe the processor's causing a problem. So I actually took out the heatsink here, and I dusted out under the processor. It was filthy in this thing. Dust everywhere. So Mike, you better appreciate this. And let me add that the heatsink on this thing, or at least the shroud, is a little bit flimsy. It isn't actually held in there very securely, but I dusted the whole thing out back there. I took the processor out of my main computer, which is a Pentium dual-core 2. Stop it. Okay, stay. Stupid thing. Stop it. That shroud is very annoying. Whatever, I'm leaving it like that. It'll actually be secured by the side panel once I put that back on. But anyhow, I just decided to change out the processor for the processor in my main box, which is, as you can see here, a Pentium dual-core E5400 2.7 GHz. The processor in here was a really good one. It was a Core 2 quad. It was only 2.4 GHz, but it was still a Core 2 quad. Unfortunately, when I changed the processor, all those problems disappeared. That's just a total shame. It really is a total shame, because that was a damn good processor. And it came with the freaking gateway, so, you know. And I'm trying to get this thing going by any means necessary. I mean, if I have to take a processor, and one of my processors, and stick it in there, I will. And what I did was I took the processor out of this thing and stuck it in my main box, and I had a Pentium 4 lying around, and I stuck it in here for the time being in the audio workstation, because it'll do fine in there for audio, I think, without a hitch. So eventually I'll buy a new processor, maybe a Core 2 Duo or even a Core 2 Quad for myself, and swap all this crap around again. But yeah. So theoretically, like, if you're watching, you're actually getting a bit of a faster processor, a 2.7 GHz versus a 2.4. It may only have 2 cores, but it's still fast. And the Pentium dual-core is essentially a Core 2 Duo with 2 megs of cache. It's still a damn good chip. This was in my main box. So you got my best chip. Damn throat, you got the best chip that I have. Christ, what is going on here? So yeah, this thing has been a doozy. The other thing I had to do is I had replaced the back fan, because this fan has a bad bearing. And it's a ball bearing fan. It has a bad bearing, and it keeps it rattles, like it vibrates, like a lot of the fans in these old Dells do. So I took a mass cool ball bearing fan and stuck it in there. So now it has a newer fan in there, blown out the back. The same fans in the front. Still, but everything seems to be in tip-top shape now. Hopefully when I install Service Pack 1 it won't freeze on me, but it shouldn't, because when I was doing stress tests on the processor, at least the Pentium dual-core, it was not freezing. So I think that Core 2 Quad had a defect in it. I've never really seen that happen. The thing that bothers me about that is that years ago, I mean, I've been friends with Mike for a number of years. I remember seeing this computer in full working action, without running, intense processing stuff without a hitch. Why all of a sudden did it just decide to clunk itself like that? That's what bothers me. Like, that seems like a major slip on Intel's part or something. I mean, my only real guess to that is that maybe there was a defect in the processor that didn't really show itself until years later. I don't know if that's weird, or maybe the defect was there and it was just showed up in symptoms that weren't really, you know, as meandering as random freezes. So, yeah, unfortunately this thing had to have a Pentium dual core put in it, but this thing is working now. It will fucking work, and it will play games just fine, as far as I can see, because 2.7 gigahertz is faster than the Core 2 quad that was in there that was 2.4. So, you're welcome for the upgrade. Well, kind of upgrade, but now working processor. I couldn't imagine what was going on with the Core 2 quad. That's one of the strangest things I've ever seen, and to me that's a tragedy, because that's such a good chip, and this was such a good machine to put it in. I mean, I'm not a fan of Gateway, but still, the specs of the machine were pretty damn good for the time, 2008. On the other hand, I'm just gonna get Vista all installed and stuff on here, and then yeah, I'll show the computer in working condition once I'm done with it. But that's so far what I've had to deal with this damn thing. This thing's been just riding my ass. It wants new parts put into it so much. So yeah. Anyhow, I'm done rambling. I'm just gonna get this thing working, and I just thought I'd share that weird processor experience, because actually I take it back. The one place I have seen it happen before is with AMD tri-cores. I've seen AMD tri-cores work perfectly for a number of years, and all of a sudden you just start getting weird random freezes because of a dead core or something. And I'm guessing that's what happened to the Core 2 quad, but I cannot be too sure. All I know is that the chip that's in here now is working perfect. As I repeat myself again. But anyhow, just thought I'd share that with you because I thought that was a little peculiar. So there is a Sound Blaster X5 in this thing, and I have to say, Creative's drivers suck. Seriously. There's no automated process. You have to keep pressing next for each individual thing that it does here. Like, this is incredibly stupid. Yes, always trust from Creative Labs. Don't nag me. Lull at you, Windows. Lull at you. And look how far. That's not a whole lot. Then look how big the download was, for God's sake. That's for a sound card. For a sound card. The only drivers you should need for the sound card should be the WDM crap that goes into Windows so that it makes noise. You shouldn't need anything else. I mean, the Asus sound card has some software with it, but this is just overboard. Creative has really gone downhill with their drivers lately. I mean, the X5 cards, I'm sure they function just fine, but they don't sound particularly good compared to the Audigy 2, Audigy 2ZS, and the Sound Blaster Live cards. They just don't. And a card that sounds better than any of those is the Audio Vortex 2, that Turtle Beach card that I've been using in the audio workstation there. Audio video workstation. However, if you're going to buy new cards, buy Asus ones. They're a lot better than this, because these drivers just are disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And see, it's just eating up CPU there for a little bit as it installs these stupid drivers. Don't buy Creative sound cards. The cards are fine, but the drivers just blech. 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 Okay, this gateway is pretty much set up to my standards now. Got a bunch of crap installed on here. They're 9.9, of course. I can have a vast antivirus on here rather than McAfee or Norton, Kaspersky, or Symantec, or any trash like that. That kind of crap should never be on a computer. Do not, if you're paying for an antivirus right now and you're not a business, you're being ripped off. I'll tell you that right now. You are being ripped off. Anyhow, yeah, let's take a look at the thing. Properties. Okay, there's the processor I had to switch out because of the bad Core 2 quad. The Intel Pentium dual core, E5400, 2.7 gigahertz, as opposed to the 2.4 gigahertz Core 2 quad that was in there before. This thing has 3 gigabytes of RAM in it, and I put 64-bit Windows on it. Windows Vista, Home Premium, since that's what was on the back of the machine. So, yeah. Device manager. Same old Western Digital drive is in there. It's got the NVIDIA GT240 in there. It's got a couple of drives. It's all Realtek internet on this board. Sound Blaster XFi, which came with the computer. I don't particularly like XFi myself because you just saw the segment before this. But yeah, pretty standard stuff on the board. Now, since I had to give him a dual-core processor, which is essentially a Core 2 Duo rebranded with a different name, and the GT240, I thought I'd run 3D Mark 06, just to show how the performance of the computer as a gaming machine is. So I'm just going to let the thing start up here. It always does that. Now, I don't know how well this is going to perform on his monitor, which is a 1600 by 1200 monitor, I think. Tips of the day can get out of my face. Alright, the resolution on this is completely wrong. How about native resolution? Lol. And there we go. Let's run 3D Mark. Now, the reason I'm not making this a screencast is because that would slow down the computer during the testing process. Now, here's the frames. You're getting 69 frames per second, which is really good. Look how smooth it is. And you're getting a little bit of tearing here and there, but that's because it turns the arrow off in order to perform the test. But other than that, it's looking excellent so far. Very smooth video. Even smooth graphics capabilities. 30 frames per second during all this crap. So this video card can handle shaders very, very well. This video card was in my main computer setup when I was in at the beginning of sophomore year of college. Look at all that. And that's at 45 frames per second. This card can handle it no problem. But keep in mind, this is DirectX 9 test, but it's a good benchmark. 25, 22, 19, 24, 20, 18. And this is during the more intense portion of it too. It's still very smooth, even though the frame rates look low. 24, 21, 19, 21, 20, 52, 49, 48, 51, 55. It's creeping towards 60. And there's the first test. And here's the one that really tests like lighting and crap on the graphics card. Look at that. 30 frames per second, solid, 29. Jump down to 19 to 24 to 20, 9 to 26 to 25 now. Doing very, very well. $38, $43, $41. There you go. There's that test. CPU test. Now here's the CPU test to test the Pentium dual core. It is going to look choppy, but it's going to perform pretty adequately. It's getting about 1 frame per second on the CPU. That's funny. This is CPU rendered graphics, I believe. So it's extremely choppy during these portions on the CPU because, of course, the CPU wasn't really designed to handle graphics and stuff. This reminds me of, like, an old video game or something. Like maybe StarCraft or something like that. Nah, it's a different game than that. It reminds me of. I don't know what this reminds me of. Like, I can picture what it is, but I have no clue what direction or what era it would be from. There's another test there. CPU test number 2. That's a little bit better. That does seem better. So this is stressing the hell out of the CPU, and it's not freezing. Unlike the Core 2 Quad, which I guess was... Which my friend Sean actually theorized that Gateway may have made a deal back then to buy bad parts on the cheap, similar to what Microsoft did with the original Xbox. The original Xbox has actually had a bad RAM put in them at one point because they could get it cheap. Yeah, the CPU test number 2 seems to be a little bit better. I'm sure this would have been a little faster with the Core 2 Quad since it could handle 4 things at once. But the Pentium dual core in here is a faster clocked processor with the same core, so yeah. Graphics test number 3, the Canyon Flight. Yeah, this is a good test here. Look how smooth that is. Very, very smooth. 27 frames per second, 35. $47, 67, 66. It's a giant thingy. Lol. Lol, it's a Loch Ness Monster, what do? So all in all, the performance of this is good. It's about the same as my main box was when I had the GT240 in it. Lol, it's shooting it in the mouth. Run away! In your blimpy thing. I think that was the last test, although I'm not completely sure. Nope, there's another one. Deep freeze, whatever this is. Little hairy because arrow's off, but it looks good to me. I'm just going to stop the test there. The 3D Mark score of this machine with this hardware is 5367 so far. CPU score is 2375, which that's still fairly good actually. So it still trumps a lot of AMD chips out of the water because AMD's architecture hasn't changed since Athlon 64. So yeah, that was just the 3D Mark test with this machine in this obnoxiously long video about one computer. And yeah, I think this computer is good to go. So all that needs to be done is for it to be picked up, and that'll be that. So hope you liked the video. I guess to finish off the video, I'll shut the machine off. See how slow Vista takes to turn off. Have a good one, everybody. Ciao.